Okay, looks like we're now streaming live on YouTube. Everybody smile. All right, thank you all. I will call to order the first calendar meeting of the PlanRVA Executive Committee. So welcome back, everyone. Hope everybody had a great, happy and healthy and safe holiday weekend. We are doing this meeting virtually, obviously, and the details for the virtual meeting can be found online in your packet. We will have opportunities for the comment to participate as well, of course, and can't wait till we get back in person, but we're grateful not just for the technology, but how staff, I think, has come light years in making these meetings seemingly perfect, seamless. I say that now, and now it'll probably crash on us, but so sorry if I jinxed you, Martha. Could we please go ahead and do our roll call of attendance and certify that we have a quorum?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Charles City County, Mr. Coda. Chesterfield County, Vice Chair Winslow.
Here.
City of Richmond, Dr. Newbell.
Here.
Goochland County, Chair Spoonhauer.
Here.
Hanover County, Mr. Peterson.
Here.
Henrico County, Reverend Nelson. New Kent County, Ms. Page. Town of Ashland, Mr. McGraw.
Here.
Thank you.
I did see that Reverend Nelson was logged on earlier.
Yeah, we did
Nelson,
see a piece a moment ago.
yes, he's on his iPhone. All right, thank you, Ms. Fusco. I appreciate that. As for I'll bring out the old business. The meeting minutes were in your agenda. Hopefully everybody had a chance to review. And this is probably a good time to sort of mention to the board, if you're not aware, our secretary, Mr. Norvig, has resigned his position on the board of supervisors in Powhatan County and is doing some other great things. And Powhatan will be submitting the person that's going to be sitting on the board for us next month. Ms. Keeter's been in contact with them, so thank you, Ms. Keeter, for that. But the meeting minutes are in your agenda. I would entertain a motion to accept these, or if any comments, reviews, or updates.
So moved.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Was that Dr. Newville?
Yes.
All right, welcome. All right, we could do this by acclamation vote. For all those in favor of accepting the meeting minutes as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Abstentions? All right, we will accept those meetings into approval and look forward to our new colleague joining us next month. All righty, we are going to move now into our charter agreement revision approvals update. So I will turn this over to Ms. Heater to kind of talk about where we are.
Thank you. You'll recall at the last board meeting in December that there was an action taken to defer this item for discussion until this meeting. So it's on both your executive committee and your full commission agendas this morning. And I thought perhaps Mr. Winslow might be able to shed kind of an update about where things are likely to go with the conversation this morning.
Yes, thank you, Martha. And would just say that it looks like while I think every jurisdiction was either in the process or had passed the entire package of amendments, we did have one jurisdiction that did not want to do so. And so at this time, I think, it'd be good for the full body today to just try to get what we can, which I think is the entire package minus the additional apportionments of seats relative to the increase in population in some of the surrounding counties outside of the city of Richmond. So I do think we should try to get what we can, and certainly Martha, to the extent that you have a suggestion on how to guide those jurisdictions that have already passed the full package, and then those who have put it off, I think it's probably easier for them. We can just send a revised package, but then the ones that have already passed it, I guess they're going to need to amend that. But that's the update.
Yes, I spoke with Mr. Gregory yesterday afternoon, and he has advised that should there be consensus on this package that Mr. Winslow just described, with the full package less that particular provision with the additional seats based on the new tiers, his advice was that the jurisdictions could, who have already approved it, could actually just adopt a new resolution approving the new version. Certainly, if it was their need or desire, they could, in that new resolution, they could reference the previous action and rescind that, but it would not be necessary. In order for the proposed charter amendments to take effect, all 9 jurisdictions would need to take action to approve the same set of revisions. And so simply just adopting a new resolution approving of those revisions, would be sufficient from his perspective. And I think he is signing on. I think there was just a little bit of a tech issue this morning, so he'll be available to talk through that in more detail.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Any discussion regarding the charter revision before we go, because it's the full committee?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to ask the jurisdiction who is having a problem, are they completely rigid in their stance, or is there any room for movement? I guess I'm addressing this to Martha.
It's been communicated to me that I think it would be preferred to go with the alternative that Mr. Winslow described, but I mean, I'll let those that have been more in the conversations perhaps speak to that.
And it's not Goochland, Mr. Peterson.
I understand.
Not this time, anyway.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Dr. Newell.
Cynthia Newbell, City of Richmond. We are scheduled, we had anticipated addressing this at our last council session. We will be addressing it at the upcoming on the 22nd. I will absolutely convey that there were concerns raised relative to, okay, my electricity just went out. Okay, I think I'm on the phone. But the final decision will be made on the 22nd, but I do want to share that there absolutely are concerns that were raised relative to the items pertaining to increased seating and primarily.
Mr. Peterson, does that suffice?
Yes, sir. I mean, that's all I was asking is that, was there any room for movement? And at this point, I guess let's wait and see. But sounds to me like it's unlikely from what I just heard.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Just before we move
Mr. Chair,
yes.
Again, the body, City of Richmond City Council, has not decisioned. It will decision on the 22nd. I want to be clear in conveying that while there are absolutely there were concerns raised without a doubt, but the body has not decisioned. And so I look forward to seeing what comes forward as a baseline that maybe at least gets us started, and future discussions I suspect can be had. But yes, no decision has been rendered.
Okay. So
Dr. Newbill, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Rosler.
Dr. Newbill, do you think we should again try to defer this month this item, or do you think we should pass what we can and then sort of work from there? What's your sense of strategy?
I would suggest at least passing what we can, or at least proposing for the jurisdiction's consideration, those things that certainly can be agreed to pretty swiftly without as much concern. Yeah.
So taking off my chair hat and putting on my Goochland hat, we've passed the original. We've sort of signaled that we have another version coming, which would be passed prior to that. Well, actually, no, it would be after. But I know I would probably want to wait to see if the city of Richmond winds up being fine with what is currently on deck, so that I don't have to go back a third time and change them.
I certainly
Chairman.
understand. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
No, I I know how challenging this is. So, well,
Yeah.
no, although I guess we could. Well, I guess it's up to the body. It's up to each jurisdiction when they're going to take it up. So we could mention that there's a third version. Although I know, in reading the minutes and recalling our last meeting, there was a desire not to have multiple versions floating around, and I think that's very wise. So we would just keep the version that is currently on the table. So if it is not on the if the decision hasn't been made yet, it may be wise just to allow Richmond to do their process, and then we can, as localities, take it up from there. It's not that long from the 22nd to our next meeting, and the urgency, and I realize there's urgency from the localities that are looking forward to the ability to have representatives instead of sending everybody to the meeting. I don't believe that we have super critical agenda items coming up in the next month, so that I don't feel like there's a huge sense of urgency, but I don't want to speak for Ms. Heater, I don't believe this is impending any negotiations that are super timely with the space allocation, which was the impetus for these changes. So Ms. Heater, could you kind of tell us, is waiting another month going to put us in any kind of jeopardy?
No, I think your suggestion, if I understand it correctly, makes a lot of sense, to allow the city of Richmond to officially deliberate on the subject. And if the other jurisdictions were to know the final decision of the city of Richmond, for example, if Dr. Newbill, the council felt like they could take action on one of the two options, then I think that would give clarity to the rest of the jurisdictions about how they should proceed, whether it's going back and adopting a new version, or for those that haven't yet taken this topic up, what to schedule in their respective agendas.
Gotcha.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Question.
Ms. Newell?
Yes. So based on Ms. Heater's, if I want to understand clearly, you will submit a second version. Is that correct? That we would be able to consider, as well as the one that's currently on the table. And the second one would be minus the seat change. Is that correct?
I'd be happy to do that if that's the direction of this group, and with Mr. Gregory's concurrence to also, I want to make sure we don't go, we follow the process that Mr. Gregory, you think is the best.
No, I was just getting clarification. I thought that's what I was hearing. So
yeah, I would be capable of doing that, certainly, to be able to provide that alternative version that Mr. Winslow described, that would be the full package, as he said, less the provision change with the additional tiers of voting seats above 250,000 in population. Eric, are you up to?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I'm,
Go ahead, Mr. Peterson.
Back to what we did last month, we started talking about multiple options and what have you. We're only talking 2 weeks. Let's let the city finish doing their what they intend to do. And let's bring this up as something that we can do unified. We've got 8 jurisdictions right now that are ready to go with what it is, but we have one that's not there. Let's give them a chance to decide where they are before we go setting up option A and option B. Once the city is able to finish their work, then I think we can all get together and come up with a single approach that we can all live with. But let's recommend deferral to our full board to our next meeting and give the city a chance to finish their work.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Peterson. Any objections to that approach or any alternative approaches we want to discuss? Hearing none, so I will look for, when we come to this item in the full committee meeting, I will look for a motion to defer. And we will handle it that way. Thank you. Before we move into new business, I want to just make sure, Ms. Fusco, we've had some folks that were able to join, that we got them from the roll.
Yes, I do have recorded. Ms. Page is present, as well as Reverend Nelson. Thank you.
And was Mr. Winslow? Did you catch him in the initial? Okay, great. All right, going on to new business, and I am really excited about this. Martha and I have been talking about sort of how to not better align, but to make sure that there's true transparency on how much PlanRVA is doing. I think one of the blessings of assuming this role was to dive deeper into everything that's going on, and I felt, having at that point been on the board 8 months, I had very little insight into all of the work that was going on with PlanRVA. So we wanted to come up with a way that we can share with the board the things that are imperative to the work that's going to be going on this year, both from hey, here's what our continuing programs, and then here's what we're going after. Here's a vision sort of that we're looking for. So Ms. Heater has prepared a key imperatives deck that we're going to be reviewing with the committee. We're not going to go in depth, and she's going to just give us a high level day with the intention that not to vote on it or anything, but that you can take a look at it, go deeper into it at your leisure. And if there's questions, or if you're wondering like, well, how come this is on here, or why is something else not on here, that we can have those discussions offline. And then be able to have something that we can present so that we can know, okay, here's for 2021, here's what this amazing organization is going to be working on, and we are all in alignment with that. So at that, I will turn it over to Ms. Heater to kind of share the high level imperatives with us.
Thank you. Just wanted to confirm everyone can see the shared screen now.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for that intro and background. I appreciate that. As Mr. Howard said, we've been working to put this together in kind of a very clear and concise setup. So this slide will be the same slide that I'll show in the full commission meeting as well. Have identified 5 imperatives based on our work program this year, and as events have unfolded, priorities have been established. And so I'll walk you through these. The first imperative, of course, is to stabilize our organization's financial position. We are continuing to engage technical resources to assist with that, with the goal of improving our financial reporting quality, capacity, and our internal processes, working on strengthening executive management, and finally, of course, achieving a successful audit at the end of the fiscal year. A second imperative is with regard to managing our core operations. As you know, we have a number of various grant-funded programs, and meeting compliance requirements for each of those is the utmost important for the agency to be able to preserve the funding that we bring into their jurisdictions, but also to be able to maintain those positive relationships with our federal and state partners. We want to make sure that we are completing and effectively reporting out on our work program priorities. And so Mr. Spoonhour and I have been talking about ways that we can engage the board in greater awareness of those activities along the way. And certainly we'll be working to do that. Maintaining positive internal and external relationships. Obviously, I think much of the work that the Planning District Commission does is relationship building and maintaining and preserving relationships. So we want to make sure that that continues to be a focus. And as you know, we have been working through the adoption of our strategic planning framework to be able to build that organizational staff capacity where needed. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in some of the programmatic updates today, but definitely kind of keeping an eye forward for where we want to be going as an agency and making sure that we're staffed appropriately to meet those needs. The third imperative around increasing revenues. We want to be able to develop and implement a brand strategy, that includes an articulation of the value that we bring to our member jurisdictions. I want to make sure that each of you as executive committee members and your colleagues on the full commission are able to bring back the message to your local councils and boards to be able to articulate, particularly during the budget season, the value of our organization. We're engaged in a similar effort statewide to be able to communicate that value to the General Assembly as they deliberate on budget allocations from the Commonwealth's budget in the biennium, and to do the same for new opportunities that we have throughout the organization. I'll share again in our program update in the full commission meeting, but always trying to be able to articulate the services and the capacity that we have available and how that might translate into new funding opportunities for the organization. Through that articulation of that value proposition, the idea is that we increase the demand for services and aid services, to just be very frank with you. And, I think, as I said, one of the components of that is to increase engagement with the Board of Commissioners as well as locality staff to make sure that we're kind of firing on all cylinders as far as understanding how the Planning District Commission could be used as an extension of your own local staff resources and what we could do to be of service to the jurisdictions. The fourth imperative around driving new initiatives. As you know, this has been an incredibly challenging year for everyone in local government. Being able to pivot, and Mr. Spoonhour mentioned this earlier with the technology transitions, but just being able to pivot during this time of remote work, that is not our normal operating mode. And I continue to be just incredibly appreciative of the flexibility and commitment of our staff members to be able to move through that process, but being able to make sure that our office is a safe place for staff members to come to work when that's appropriate, and to be able to continue to function during this unusual time has been a priority for this year. Unplanned, albeit, but definitely a priority. As you know, we've been heavily engaged, several staff members on our team, in assisting with the startup of the Central Virginia Transportation Authority. That entity is an exciting new endeavor for the Richmond region, and we're certainly very happy to be a part of it and be able to support where our staff capacity is beneficial to that effort. We have been in conversations for the last year in preparation for the release of the 2020 census results and how we can update our regional indicators dashboard with new data to be able to not just respond to current needs, but really think about the changing circumstances in our region as it relates to a post-COVID world, and how that might bring alignment to some of the jurisdictions and working cooperatively together. So we'll be working on refreshing those indicators and working with each of the localities to find out what other data needs might you have that we should be tracking on a regional level for comparative purposes. And finally, we've been focused on growing our emergency management and environmental programs, bringing new revenue streams to those programs to be able to support both the Emergency Management Alliance of Central Virginia, as well as our staff members at the locality level in environmental programs, to make sure that all of the likely new requirements around environmental compliance are something that the localities are poised to meet. Finally, the fifth imperative, advancing special priorities. as I mentioned, we have these health and safety measures that we're working toward. Mr. Spoonhour mentioned we do have our upcoming expiration of our current lease agreement. So thinking critically and intentionally about our future office space needs and how we can meet those in the future. The charter revision certainly has been a significant endeavor this fiscal year, and continuing to build some collaborative partnerships. I've been in pretty regular conversation with a number of other regional entities that serve our local jurisdictions, either among the 9 or a slightly different footprint, to be able to talk through ways that we might be able to achieve operational efficiencies, if there are ways that we could leverage each other's resources so that we don't have to replicate that across all of the organizations, and really kind of thinking about that. And I think over the next few months, we're likely to have a couple of ideas coming back to the executive committee for consideration to bring to the full commission to be able to think about how we could better leverage those partnerships and maybe, quite frankly, save a little bit of money on everybody's books. So that is a very brief kind of highlight. I don't know, Mr. Spoonfire, if I dug too much, but behind these slides we do, and I'll just show you an example, have a more detailed description of each of those 5 key imperatives. What are we really talking about? What are those steps to be able to achieve each of the goals inside the imperatives, and what's the timeline? So as I mentioned, we have a slide that looks very similar to this in format, set up for each of those 5 imperatives. The intention this morning would be that we share this with the full commission. We send it out electronically to everyone afterwards so that you have time to spend with it. And as Mr. Spoonhour said, looking for feedback and input over the next couple of weeks as we prepare for the March commission meeting to bring this back in its final form, to be able to make sure that we're all aligned with what the focus and what the priority imperatives are.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Heater. To me, this is a pretty bold move. We just got through the new year and the tradition of New Year's resolutions. It's one thing to make a resolution, but it's another thing to make a resolution for your agency and then put it on YouTube so that everybody can hold you accountable. So thank you for that, being brave to do that. I probably won't ask for this in the full commission meeting, but from the executive committee, we have a couple minutes. Any initial thoughts on this? Is this a format that is, that looks like it will be useful?
I think it lays it out pretty clearly, Mr. Chairman. I like it. I think, it gives people some clarity about what the future is, and that's always appropriate, and particularly in a regional body where I think the day-to-day operations, many of us are a little unfamiliar with more of the products that come out of it, and what we can do to push those long-range products along. So I think this is very, very good.
Thank you, Mr. Winslow. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, Chair.
Yes, Dr. Boo.
Yeah, without being repetitive, I would absolutely agree. It's very strategic and intentional in these, what I consider to be key areas. So yes, I think it is really well laid out and well done.
All right, well, thank you. So again, look for those. We're happy to entertain conversations. These are fluid. And I do think it's important to also call out, I think, a fast follower to this, especially if you look at imperative 3, the increased revenue. I'm in conversations weekly with Martha as a normal course of how we operate together. And it is without fail that during that conversation, something will come up that is very powerful that I didn't even realize the agency was doing. So a fast follower to this is going to be sort of a dashboard of sorts that show just the ongoing work, which, at my old role, we used to call it the imperative drive the engine. So what is it to keep this thing running? And I believe once there's more visibility, I know myself for Goochland County, and probably a lot of the smaller localities that don't have a lot of the resources, and from a staff perspective that that some of the larger localities may have. PlanRVA I'm posing that it'd be a great place to go and be able to, for lack of a better word, hire PlanRVA to help with some of the things that we want to get to, but just have to backburn, but we might have the budget to do. So I think this in partnership with that is going to give greater visibility and just really just show everybody what's already going on. That's the nice thing about this isn't any new work except for putting the slides together. It's just highlighting the work that's already being done. So very excited about that. So thank you, Ms. Heater, for putting this together. Anything else from the community member? We don't have a place on here, but anything we want to discuss before we adjourn before our 9 o'clock full commission meeting? All right. At that, I will call our executive committee meeting for February the 11th adjourned, and